PGA Tour is a good example. I think they set the benchmark in my analysis of sports in the US. They shipped automated AI commentary into Tourcast. They also used AI as a quality control system. Sports organizations are built for broadcast, for live streaming, not for a data pipeline to be created for AI. Right? So it's a shift in mindset. Most likely the AI will mess up. There's a lot of issues around the rights and the data ownership. Is that okay? Is that not okay? Any small mistake can be brutal. Crossing that bridge is not easy.
Welcome to the Success Revenue Podcast, where AI meets leadership and real business impact, from the Middle East to the world. This is the show for leaders navigating how AI is unlocking human impact and reshaping how businesses grow.
We are your host, Ivy Ferrero, executive leader and speaker, and Haider Al-Saad, CEO of Nebulous, where businesses build and deploy AI agents. Join us for another conversation on this episode.
All right, guys, we are so excited. We have an incredible guest for you guys today. But before we get started, as always, if you are enjoying the show, please take a second to give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube, wherever you are listening. It really helps us reach more leaders and founders like you. And now, let's go ahead and get started. Today, we are joined by Vinit Mehta, a Dubai-based operator turned investor with 24 years of experience across B2B, SaaS, streaming, media tech, and sports tech, spanning the US, India, and the Middle East. He currently leads Pressplay Capital, an early-stage fund dedicated to the attention economy, and works with Agora, a Nasdaq-listed company driving a real-time conversational AI and engagement technology across the Middle East. Vinit has built businesses from zero in markets where nobody was asking for what he was selling. He scaled teams across 3 continents, and he sits at an intersection that very few people occupy, where media, sports, AI, and capital all meet. Vinit, welcome to the Success Revenue Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me. It helps that we're recording on a Friday. So TGIF, and looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Welcome, and excited for the conversation and to have you here today with us.
Thank you.
So, Vinit, you have had an interesting life. It definitely has been non-linear. So, tell us a little bit more about where are you based, what is your background, and how did you ended up where you're at today?
Yeah, I mean, I'm based in Dubai now. I was not 4 years ago. I moved here from Mumbai, India. So I'm originally from Mumbai, India. I come from a medical family. My father is a cardiologist. My mom's a psychotherapist, and both are still practicing in Mumbai. So naturally, I had to do something different, and I went into business. And I moved to the US when I was 18 years old, went to UT Austin and studied economics. I graduated right after 9/11, so the US job market was frozen. There were no jobs, but I had family in the diamond business, and so I moved to New York in 2002 to join a company called Rosie Blue, which at the time was the world's largest diamond manufacturer and De Beers site holder. And I knew nothing about diamonds, but the industry was just figuring it out, e-commerce. And so, as a 22-year-old, understanding the internet, I found it super exciting. So we built an online business. That was my first business I built, selling into Amazon.com, BlueNile.com, JCPenney.com, Sam's Club, for their build your own engagement ring programs, where the user could essentially marry a specific diamond with a specific style of ring and create something unique. That became a decently successful business. We were doing around $17 million in 2.5, 3 years of starting. But post that, the entrepreneurial bug bit again, and I co-founded a company called Angara.com, which is one of the early direct-to-consumer fine jewelry plays. So that's where I started. From 98 to 2008, for a decade, I was in the US. And I moved back to India in 2008 after doing my MBA in the US, and spent the next decade, I would say from 2008 to 2017, close to a decade, around startups. And I got pulled into the world of media, streaming, online video. My first startup in India when I was back was streaming on tablets and taxis. So I took the New York yellow cab idea, did it for an Indian audience, fairly successful. And then we built out a similar system at a company called KPIT in India where we were streaming on phones, on mobile phones. So the user or a bus traveler would enter a bus, connect to the Wi-Fi in the bus, and we would stream content on a user's phone. That became the one of the world's largest offline streaming network because basically you could stream content without using your data. We got to around 17,000 buses, people streaming on their phones, consuming content, a little like what you see on the planes, on the flights, but this was built for public transport and buses in India. Because in India, at that time, 2014, 15, data was super expensive. It was $1 a GB. So this was a great way for people to consume content for free while they were enjoying their bus ride. And then for people who are listening, 2016, 17 is when the data revolution or the bandwidth revolution started in India, where Reliance Jio disrupted the market by slashing the cost of bandwidth from $1 a GB to 10 cents a GB overnight. So suddenly video streaming became the hottest thing to do. Everyone was consuming content on their phones. My business died, right? So I actually post that went back into employment and I became the country manager of a NASDAQ listed company called Bright Cove, which actually is headquartered in Boston. And over the next 5 years, from 16 end to 2021, we helped hundreds of broadcasters, publishers, and sports rights holders go direct to consumer, leveraging video streaming technology. Post COVID, I took a sabbatical from work and I was consulting with Endeavor Streaming and IMG. And that work actually got me to Dubai. So that's the journey and the arc, starting in 1998, moving to the US, then moving back to India, and now Dubai. So looking back, I must just on this question, I basically followed the internet, right? So whether it's e-commerce in New York or mobile video in India, and now we do a lot of work around AI and sports tech and real-time infra in the Middle East. So 3 different geographies. Same thesis that basically, distribution and attention are the real moats.
Wow, an interesting life for sure. And Vinit, tell us a little bit more about Press Play Capital.
Press Play Capital, actually, we started the fund because a lot of entrepreneurs who are building in the attention economy, whether it's gaming or sports tech or media tech, they said that on the investor side, most of the investors are looking at, direct to consumer or fintech or prop tech or crypto, but they wanted someone to invest who really understands the space. And I think that's why we said, okay, we've been operators. We can actually really help our portfolio companies succeed and grow. So why don't we formalize that through a fund? And that's how Press Play Capital was started, to actually pay back to the community that's given me a lot in the streaming, media tech, sports tech space. So it's more of an operator-led VC model where if we invest, we like to help our companies succeed and grow as well.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And it's also a very good model right now, right? I think the VC landscape in general is shifting to become less just about the capital and more about that operational help and knowledge as well that startups need to accelerate. So it sounds like that's a lever that you can really pull with the companies that you guys are involved with through investment or otherwise, which is really cool. And if we stay on the operational piece, right? You obviously have been essentially, like you said, following the internet, but throughout all that, at least for the past, decade plus, been selling and driving revenue and ensuring that the businesses can grow in different ways. And with that, I know there are a lot of different frameworks out there that people use in terms of how do we drive sales, revenue, how do we build business. And you've talked about different ones, MedPick being one of the ones that you've spoken about highly. Tell us a little bit how like that framework, or if there's other frameworks that have shaped how you drive business, sales, growth, or you help now today these companies from an operational perspective.
Yeah, man. I mean, when I started out with Bright Cove, I had not much formal sales training. And I did not realize the importance of it till well into the job. And actually, that's the advantage of working with a US based SaaS software B2B company because they really have all these frameworks in place for everything from sales and marketing and stuff like that. And so the first one we were trained on is called MEDDPICC, which is, MEDDPICC. It's an acronym, and each letter stands for something. So basically, I'll just walk the audience through essentially what it is. It's basically saying that if you're selling, high ticket software, and this can also apply to AI, you should try and map the prospect in a particular format and try and have particular information about the prospect so you can be more successful in the pursuit. So M is metrics, E is economic buyer, D is decision process, D is decision criteria, so it's MEDD. P is identify the pain of the user, and C is champion, and the last C is competition. So that's MEDDPICC, and basically it just helps in framing the commercial narrative and conversation when you go out and try and sell, because it's not like you rock up to a prospect, he or she's gonna buy what you have to offer. It's a complex sales cycle. So we try and use this metric to find out, okay, can we get a champion on the other side who can basically sell internally on our behalf? Should we track who the competition is before we sell so that we are much, much better prepared to try and pick points where you are better than competition, let's say in software or a product? And so, plus, identify what the purchase process is on the other side, right? If you know all these answers beforehand, like who's going to sign, who's dispersing the money, who needs to be convinced, because multiple times there are like so many people in organizations that need to be convinced on your product. So that process is complex, basically. And so MEDDPICC just makes it easy. I have a joke. So I had a joke with with my friends in the US, because I was basically selling in India. So we were a little like an island. We were like 5 people working for a NASDAQ listed company in the US. And so one of the sales kickoffs, I was joking with the guys. I'm like, MEDDPICC should really be called MEDDPRICK, because you're missing an R is a relationship.
Yeah.
So, this part of the world, especially, I mean, you guys are in Dubai and, I was selling in India. It all starts with firstly building the relationship. So I think you got to, these are all frameworks. You got to basically see what works for you in terms of your sales process. But I must say this, a lot of the largest deals that I closed on software sales, I actually used MEDDPICC quite extensively. And after a point in time, it became sort of ingrained in your head to say, okay, I don't need to go back to a framework. These are the things I need to look for in the prospect that I'm selling to make it more effective. So, but essentially, frameworks are there for guidance. I think relationships create the chance to use that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Absolutely, definitely agree with that. I think especially for, whether that's people in the audience that are coming up and doing sales and understanding the importance of having a framework as a guideline and understanding. You don't need to reinvent the wheel again. People have been testing and trying and failing for decades, learning and finding these insights. And also for the leaders, which most of the people listening to this conversation are managing different teams. It's a good way of ensuring that across your team, there's a minimum level of standard process, etc., that they can adhere to. So I think, the use of frameworks and building is really important. And Vinit, I want to go back a little bit, because you were talking to us about the early parts of your journey in the early 2000s, getting into the diamond online selling and the job that you had or business that you built up. At a time, back then, for us old enough to remember, it was, post IT bubble, 9/11. It was definitely not an easy time to find a job or build a business or do anything really in the economy at that point in time. But I'm kind of curious now, you fast forward, 20 plus years, and now you're helping other startups, you're investing. What did you learn back then about, resilience, resourcefulness, and the way that you have to kind of attack that type of situation to become successful, that's still helping you and showing up today in how you're operating or helping other businesses?
I think I would say that's a good question. I mean, essentially, the biggest thing I learned is that say yes before you're ready. and then you'll figure it out, right? Because otherwise, there's someone else who's going to be in the same position. And if you overthink certain things, you might miss the boat. So I think the message to, I guess, I mean, this is a learning in hindsight. You got to basically say more yes when you think the opportunity is a good one and it falls into your lap. And then you figure out stuff as you go along. Because, a lot of times ignorance can be your advantage. Everyone doesn't have to know everything the first day at the job. A lot of stuff, and I think that's refreshing in today's day and age, and especially when I look at my friends and family across the Middle East. A lot of the job market can be very cliquish to say that, okay, I need this person to have this much experience in this field with this expertise. It sort of doesn't give a chance for newer ideas or newer blood to come in who might not have the experience but make up for it with the enthusiasm and the excitement and the passion. So I think that's a big learning that for me, especially when I look at the job market or my friends and who are working and who are entrepreneurs in India and the Middle East, is that ignorance can be an advantage. So do not discount newer people who are looking at jobs or who want a chance. Hire for passion. Look at the passion behind it. So I think that matters a lot. Also, the resourcefulness beats your resume, right? So you can have a very big resume, but if you are resourceful, you can make things happen. And so those are big learnings that along the way that, if opportunity comes, say yes, and then you will figure it out if you have the right mix of passion and enthusiasm.
I love this, Vinit. Yeah, I feel like, and oftentimes they say that when investors are looking to invest, they invest on the person behind the business. And sure, they have to see that you're obsessed, that you're resourceful, that you basically have the energy to move everything, even if on paper it might not look like it. I've always heard that as well. And one of the things that I was thinking about when you were talking about your journey and building resilience and saying yes is also having the conviction as well, because when you're starting from scratch, the proof isn't there. You have to move from a place that you haven't seen any sort of outcomes, you haven't seen the money. You basically have to believe so much on the vision that is basically what forces you to move. So I love that. And Vinit, I'm kind of curious. You have moved from the US to India and now you're in Dubai. Each time you have had to rebuild your network and your positioning in a new market. So, what's the hardest part about reestablishing credibility in a new geography? And what shortcuts would you say you have learned that actually have helped you?
Yeah, I mean, when I tell some of my friends and family about the journey, they say that you're crazy, but then it was that's the life we chose. I think there is no, broadly speaking, there is no real shortcut, but I can tell you some of the tips and tricks that sort of in hindsight, I had a chance to think about this question a little bit before the podcast. The Look, what I did in New York and the US after a point in time did not matter in India. And what I did in India did not matter in the Middle East, right? For people who are meeting you for the first time, they're like, yeah, yeah, sure, you did this in the US, but then it's basically every time it's a fresh start, right? So you need to go in with the mindset and the grit. I would say, the grit aspect is not highlighted enough for people who are moving to newer geographies and starting life afresh. But it requires a particular fabric of, again, resourcefulness and grit for you to make it in a different geography and make it successful for you. So it's not easy. Having said that, I think when I first moved to Dubai from India, I did not know anyone. I had, unlike a lot of my Indian friends, I had no family in Dubai. I had a few people who I knew who were friends who were in the US also at the time, but those were in different fields. No one was doing stuff in media tech and AI and sports tech that I wanted to do. I think what helped me is content marketing. So I must call out a dear friend called Jan Colleter, who runs a weekly newsletter called the Streaming Lab. And so he wrote about the streaming industry in the Middle East. every week. Different topics, perspectives, who's doing what, who the different players, how streaming is coming up in the Middle East, because streaming in the Middle East is a relatively newer area of focus. It's come up in the last 5 or 6 years. So no one was really being the advocate and evangelist of streaming in the Middle East. So he took up that role. And he said, Vinit, he saw me on LinkedIn and we met at one of the events at Dubai. And he's like, I'm looking for someone to look at writing about streaming in India, because you know streaming in India so intimately. You've been a thought leader, almost a streaming pioneer. Can you write about streaming in India every week on a Substack, which goes to around 3 or 4 thousand subscribers who are the who's who of the media world across the Middle East? So I started writing down on different topics, researching on the streaming industry in India, and sharing my knowledge. Now it sounds easy, but doing it every week and dropping a newsletter every Wednesday is tough.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys know this with the podcast, right? It's not.
No, we tried. We tried to launch a newsletter, and after 3 episodes, we're like, this is a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. I mean, I did it for 2 years, so we got to 100 plus newsletters. But every week, I didn't miss a single newsletter. Every Wednesday, a newsletter would drop at 8 a.m. to 3,000 plus subscribers. Now, I cannot emphasize enough how much of an impact and brand building that did for me personally in a new market. So, I could meet a lot of people, but basically, this does your work for you when you're sleeping, right? A newsletter goes out, it's persistent, it's there on the website. People can see how you think and read about how you think, who you stand for, who's Vinit Mehta. So I think I could communicate a lot more on the newsletter, much more than I could do maybe in person. So I would say that that's one. It's not a shortcut, right? Because you got to be consistent every week.
Yeah. Tough. No,
Yeah.
I actually want to launch a newsletter on Substack, but more from a personal perspective. I think it'll be easier for me to commit to it versus when it's a business newsletter. That is just like much more like because when we had ours, it was like, let's put a framework, let's put this. It had like different sections, but with you is definitely to do something consistent. It's definitely a lot of effort that you need to put into it. So great job on doing that.
Yeah. So,
And Vinit, I'm kind of curious now that you work at Agora, which essentially powers real-time engagement infrastructure for over 1,800 organizations across 200 plus countries. When you are talking to a potential enterprise customer in the Middle East about adopting real-time AI and engagement technology, what's the biggest mental barrier they have, and how do you help them move past it?
yeah, I think, my answer to this is slightly counterintuitive. I think most of the Middle East, the AI adoption is solid, right? Any research report out there that you read says that the AI adoption is great, one of the fastest, one of the highest in the world is the UAE, for example. I think when you are in the selling motion trying to sell AI today, it's, a lot of people make the mistake of talking about digital transformation. And then you lose the prospect right there, right? I think it's more about proving out ROI. And so either you can showcase how your AI can completely transform customer delight in a cheaper way, or can increase revenue, right? Or somehow transform the user experience. But what I'm finding is that a lot of prospects and customers in the Middle East are very smart buyers because they get hit by so many pitches. Everyone is coming here. Every AI company worth its salt from the US, Europe, India, Australia, they're all in the Middle East because they think they'll come to the Middle East and go back with a whole bag of gold, right? so, but so I think what happens is that you have to prove outsized returns. It is hard. It is really hard to prove outsized returns, or you need to have so much confidence in your product and service that you can actually deliver that. But otherwise, it's slowly becoming everyone's offering a slightly different variation of the next person. So
Yeah.
that's the hard truth. I think basically, it becomes so much easier. I mean, Ivy, you guys are doing a lot of work in AI and AI stuff as well. So I don't need to preach to the choir, but essentially creating stuff with AI is so much easier that unless you are able to prove outsized returns to organizations, it's difficult. Second, I must say is that there is a lot of pushback because most of the managers are not very conducive to change. So the adaptability is a question for sure. So, the sales cycles are longer. I think folks are willing to commit to shorter pilots. Let's do a deal for 3 months or 6 months and then we'll see. So the commitment levels, if you think that, people are committing to annual contracts, it may not happen that fast.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, I think that's such good insight for people to bring with them. And Vinit, I wanted to kind of talk about AI also, and as it relates to the sports industry and these things. You wrote recently, I believe, on LinkedIn about how the sports industry as a whole is creating what you call the content factory, powered by LLMs and AI. And you pointed to examples like the PGA Tour, MLB, MLS, NFL, etc. But at the same time, we see still a lot of people talk about being, in this kind of experimental phase, running pilots, etc. While this is now becoming more in real production development, these examples that you mentioned in your posts. Walk us through what's the difference, right? And how do you get from running these AI pilots and having good ideas to actually getting into real production environments within this context of sports and content and AI?
See, the PGA Tour is a good example. I think they set the benchmark. In my analysis of sports in the US, I followed the golf journey with the PGA Tour and they're doing a fantastic job. So at the Players' Championship last year, they shipped automated AI commentary into Tourcast, right? Their mobile app and website running on Amazon Bedrock using Claude as the model, I believe. And, they were generating commentary on over 10,000 shots a day. That's impossible to do with humans, right? But the thing that they did smartly, and this is a learning for me as well, is that they also used AI as a quality control system, where they said that we'll use AI to produce content, but we'll also use AI to critique the content that we produce and flag issues on the content. So that way, because in sports and especially in live sports, any small mistake can be brutal.
Yeah.
It'll blow up on social media. So you got to be very careful on the kind of content that you put out there. You can use AI as an enabler, but it's important to use AI as someone to quality check as well. So that's one big learning. I think MLB used Gemini for live commentary. That was the moment, I think, when AI moved into live, high stakes, consumer facing sports. And so that's another example. I think the NFL has over 140 live content correspondents now who are all augmented with Adobe Firefly and Express. That's a literal AI augmented content factory. And MLS and tennis are doing a great job as well. Now, I think, let me come to the point of where are people getting stuck, right? Because there's a lot of good stuff going on, but there's a lot of challenges as well, which people are working through. One is the infrastructure, right? So sports organizations are built for broadcast, for live streaming, not for a data pipeline to be created for AI, right? So it's a shift in mindset. So I think that's a big thing also, and this applies across industries. It's a mindset shift, right? Basically, so crossing that bridge is not easy. Second is the accuracy expectations for content that's produced is very, very high, right? So for example, if you create an image to be used, which is consumer facing, most likely the AI will mess up some logo somewhere, some text somewhere. So you got to use it again and again to come with the right output. So it might not be as cost effective as people can imagine, especially when it comes to image and video, because people expect the best straight away. There's a lot of repetition required to arrive at the output that is successful. And then the legal aspect of it, right? So when it comes to creating content for sports or for any platform, there's a lot of issues around, the rights and the data ownership, right? So, are the rights to be used by the LLM? Then the LLM will have access to all your data. Is that okay? Is that not okay? Who owns the IP of the content that's created? So, those are the things that are I would say, breaks in the process that are stopping the acceleration from going full on.
Yeah, no, I think that those are excellent points. I'll give the audience two examples to add to what you said, because I was looking at the Masters, if we talk about the golf as an example, that ran just a few weeks ago, and they have this streaming application where you can literally any of the 3 days pick any player and see every single swing at any time live throughout, and it's a free app, so anyone can literally go into it, and then every single swing an entire weekend, every single player is available. So the technology is there. It's about how do you leverage it, right? And then you take that and you look at the NBA, for example. They have these high resolution cameras
Right.
across every arena that looks at every movement of the player, and AI analyzes all the statistics, the data, how they move, exactly what's happening at every single step. So I think the technology is there, and I think we can see it more and more in production, both on the front end, kind of what we as consumers will see, but also on quote unquote on the back end in terms of what the teams, the players, the organizations, the leagues themselves, the data that they have access to, and the information that they can leverage through AI. But I think, you mentioned something that's really important, because this is not just for the sports industry, but I think across industries. And I see this, every day working with regulated verticals and AI, the data readiness, right? The pipeline that will power the AI to actually do real work, and as well as the integration into existing systems, both with data as well as, doing output and actions. How do you see successful organizations versus maybe less successful organizations handling this data piece? Because it's not just something to say, okay, we want clean data and it magically appears, or we want data that AI can work with and process and create real value from. It is a mind shift, but it's also operationally, you need to do something. How do you see differences in terms of a good organization versus maybe a less successful organization when it comes to AI deployment is approaching this particular piece?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'll tell you this, the technology, as you said, technology is there. It's about the org chart, right? So when you say the organizations who will eventually be successful with AI or augmenting their workflows and processes, whether it's revenue augmentation or cost cutting or customer delight, I think the org chart across sports, media specifically, are waking up to this whole new world of disruption, right? So this is probably the most disruption that we are going through since the advent of the color television, which was in the early 70s. The 70s was early television, then streaming happened with OTT, and now it's AI, everything, AI content, right? Deep fakes, what have you. That you have to have strong leadership to take that call. And I've seen this time and again, where it all starts from a strong leadership. So the organizations who are, using these technologies successfully have incredibly strong leaders who themselves are strong believers in AI. So everyone else falls in line, right? So once you have a strong leadership, whether it's a data problem or a accuracy problem or a LLM as a judge requirement, you can get consultants, or you can ask Claude to fill in the gaps for you. But if you don't have a strong leader who's basically willing to take that risk, then it won't happen. So a lot of this, the data stuff is of course super important, that is the data being tracked in any organization, because AI will not work without significant amount of data and learnings from that data. In sports, I've seen organizations that have tracked data, and there are few that have not. Now, the ones that have not are actually scrambling to try and create synthetic data so that they can get their AI models off the ground. But yeah, I'll pause there.
Yeah, well, that's great.
Wow, so interesting. Vinit, I wanted to ask you, you are currently raising your
Mhm.
first fund with Press Play Capital, a 10 million vehicle focus on the attention economy across the Middle East, India, and the US. For anyone listening who is either an investor or a founder building in these spaces, what's the thesis in 1 minute and how can they find you?
Yeah, so our thesis is one line is attention is the most valuable commodity of the next decade. And sports is the most concentrated form of attention we believe on the planet. AI is rewriting the entire stack from content creation to distribution to monetization. So we want to back the builders who are basically building in this new attention economy. The fund is a $10 million vehicle based in Delaware. We want to build a bridge between the US innovation and MENA distribution. So we basically invest in early stage sports tech and media tech founders and startups across the Middle East and the US.
Wow, super cool.
Yeah, that's
Super cool.
exciting. Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and where you can find me, you can look me up on LinkedIn, pressplaycapital.com, as well as pressplaysportsnetwork.com. So we also started a sports network to basically help our portfolio companies grow their business globally, and also a sports sponsorship network for streamers. So any brand who wants to advertise on live sports streaming can do so through this network. So Pressplay is the name.
Excellent. Excellent. No, that's fantastic. And definitely, for us that lived long stretches of our lives in the US, and if you know anything about the media landscape there today, it's sports and politics news. That's it. That's kind of what is getting eyeballs, whether that's broadcast, cable, streaming. So it's definitely the right place in terms of the attention piece and where the economy is going. Awesome. So, Vinit, this conversation has been fantastic. And what we'd like to do at the end of it is do what we call a rapid fire section here with some quick questions and answers. So, I want to see if you are ready for that.
Sure.
Awesome. Yeah, we won't make it too hard for you. I promise. It should be pretty straightforward here. All right. So, we'll start off with an easy one here. The biggest opportunity with AI right now is.
The biggest opportunity with AI is real-time voice-first AI in non-English markets. Because everyone is obsessed with building the next LLM, Silicon Valley, San Francisco, China. I think the real alpha is in markets like India, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, Africa. Billions of users who will probably not text or write and prompt. They will use their voice and prompt.
Yeah, excellent. And on the flip side, the biggest risk with AI right now is.
I think the biggest risk is the trust factor. I see this by talking to a lot of prospects that, especially on the content side of things, and even in general, issues around privacy, issues around trust, issues around verification of the content. So I think we've jumped on at creating all these new tools and products and features and not thought long enough about the verification layer.
Perfect. And if we pretend we have a time machine here and then we move into the future 12 months here, fast forward, when you're sitting there in 12 months and looking back at that year that's just passed, what would you like the big headline to be?
Well, the big headline, I think this year I want to make it, I was thinking about last year as well, but this year I want to be about paying it forward. I think capital also is an endeavor to pay back to the community that's given me a lot in building my career. So it's paying it back by helping entrepreneurs. Of course, there's a business angle to it, but by actually helping entrepreneurs and bringing them up to the level that they can also be successful. And then professionally, it's about press play, and personally, it's about spending more time with the family. I think we all say this a lot, but I find myself, especially off late, on my Instagram, I get targeted with so many AI reels and tools that I'm getting so much FOMO, and it's about trying to manage that FOMO and just cut off sometimes.
Yeah.
So I think that's another challenge.
Yeah, every day I wake up, there's a new release, and I've
Yeah.
seen so many things.
Exactly. So yeah.
And Vinit, what is one thing you are grateful for right now?
I'm very grateful for my family. I think, my wife actually She is an AI educator. So she teaches kids AI. And I think, she's doing an incredible job. She works at a company called Coding and More. So she's quietly doing some of the most important work that people probably will never hear about. So I think that's something to call out. I have two kids and yeah, just very grateful for the family.
Oh, that is so sweet. And what's one word you want this year to be about?
I think to be satisfied. It's going back to the AI part. I think the way the world is shifting and moving, you tend to be always chasing the next big thing, the next bright LLM, the next automation workflow. And at some point in time, I think I just want to just take a step back and say, okay, for the next 3 or 4 months, I want to build no automation and just be satisfied with what I have and just use that properly. So I think it's about a question of being satisfied.
Yes, I love that. Well, Vinny, it has been a pleasure to have you on the show. For the listeners, we're going to make sure that we drop Vinny's LinkedIn profile on the description of the podcast. But Vinny, thank you so much for being here with us.
Pleasure to
man.
be here. Thank you, Ivy, and thank you, Heather. This was truly enjoyable. Thank you for the very well thought through questions, and I hope I did justice.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Our pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Success Remedy podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube, and also give us a 5-star rating on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts.